turned 36 a few weeks ago, and the best thing that I've done for myself so far in my 30s isn't a workout or morning routine. It's honestly just been purposefully using technology less. For the last few years, but especially since last fall, I've been swapping out some of my digital habits with more analog ones. And honestly, I've been pretty surprised at how much of a difference it makes. As someone who works in digital marketing, I am on screens all day. And I started noticing that the more time I spent using these digital tools, the less present I felt in my own life. And it started feeling like my free time after work just started blending into my work day. Because I would be on Instagram and email for work, and then I would finish work and I would be on Instagram and email for myself. I've been trying out a variety of different analog habits for a while now. These are the 4 that have made the most difference in my day-to-day life, and why I wish I hadn't waited until my 30s to start many of them. First one is taking my work notes in its own journal. While it might be a little boring, it's definitely had a huge impact on my work day. Before this, I could be a bit all over the place. At work, we use Asana for project management, Slack for internal comms, email for external comms, and sometimes internal comms too, Google Sheets, Google Forms, Google Docs, and trying to track everything between all of these was a lot. Now you might be thinking, can't you just use Notion or keep a running to-do list on your computer? And I did think of that, and I did try that, and it did not work for me. I was just spending way too much time digging through all of those trying to find what I needed. For me, the breaking point for this is that I had a coworker who would send me project requests across, no joke, every single platform. Email, Slack threads, Asana comments, Asana projects, tags in Google Sheets, not actual tags in Google Docs. It was wild. Just wherever she happened to be in that moment was just where she would send out the request. And one day she dropped a request for a totally unrelated project in a 15-thread closed email discussion on just something completely different. And if you've ever tried to find a specific detail in an email chain for an unrelated project that you're not even working on anymore, it is a lot. And that's when I started writing everything down in one notebook. Hey, buddy. Every request, every to-do, every note from a meeting, all in one single source of truth. And it sounds so simple, but it's really made such a huge difference. I'm not searching through 5 different apps for one specific detail. I can just scroll back, flip back a few pages in my notebook, and I can find it. And someday I hope to even be able to organize it by dates, but that's a project for the future. The second analog habit is also the one that I've been doing for the longest, and that is manually brewing my morning cup of coffee. So I've been manually brewing my morning cup of coffee since the start of COVID, which unfortunately also aligns with the start of my 30s. And there have been 2 main reasons why I've really stuck with this. First off, it just tastes better, and I'm able to dial each coffee into my specific taste preferences. And that's clearly like the obvious one, but the second reason is, I would say, equally as important to me. Making coffee by hand is just a routine that really forces me to slow down and be in the moment. I heat the water, I weigh and grind the beans, and then I just get to pay attention to pouring concentric circles for a few minutes. It takes about 10 minutes from start to finish, and for those 10 minutes, I'm just completely disconnected from technology. I'm not scrolling through my phone, I'm not checking my emails, I'm not thinking about what's stressing me out for that day. I'm just making coffee. My third analog habit has been going back to reading physical books. This is one where I really felt a big difference, also literally. For a long while after college, I would typically use an e-reader or audiobook, pretty much exclusively for convenience. It was easy access to pretty much any book I would want at almost an instant. But I was still having so much trouble not getting distracted, because an e-reader is still a screen, and it still just really kind of put my brain in that mode. And the specific moment that I realized these drawbacks is burned into my mind. I was listening to the audiobook for Feel Good Productivity, which is a book about productivity, obviously. And I was doing house chores at the same time. And I kept having to rewind the same point because I would just zone out while listening to it. And eventually I paused it because when I finished washing my dishes, I wanted to go and write something down from it. And I still haven't gone back to listen to it and write it down. It's been about 2 years. And maybe that tidbit would have been the piece of productivity advice that finally worked. Although I doubt it. So I went back to physical books, and it has been great. I'm not jumping around apps mid-chapter anymore. And it's just so nice to be able to hold your spot and still flip through the pages and reference something earlier in the book. And going into the library on the weekend can just be like such a genuinely nice thing to do with your time. When you go in there, you can talk with the staff, get recommendations, browse through all of their books, and leave with free ones. It's just such a nice break from the normal hubbub of the world. Also, just shout out to local libraries. You should support them because they're doing great work for the communities they're in. And the fourth habit is very connected to this one because it's how I've been deciding what to read. And that fourth habit has been tracking my to-read list in a notebook. I used to use Goodreads a lot, and I've talked about this in some other videos. Goodreads is Goodreads, but I found that using it made me actually put less thought into what book I was reading next. If I didn't have a specific thing in mind that I wanted to read, I would just pick randomly something from the top of the list. Start it and hope for the best. With very mixed results. For a while, I had a lot of books that I had started, but none that I liked enough to make it past page 100. So I moved my to-read list to a journal. The front is what I'm currently reading, and the back is just a running list of everything I want to read. Arnold, little chewy boy. Though realistically, it's probably already longer than I'll ever be able to finish. And something about seeing all the options written on paper, physically all there in front of me, has actually changed how I've decided what I want to read. It's really made me be more intentional in choosing what book I pick up next. Because I can see all the options right there. I can just flip through for inspiration before I even need to pick what I read next. It's much easier just to find a book with a common theme to one you're just finishing up, or realizing that two would be really good in conversation with each other because they're from the same period but a different view of the world. Or even just like I'm in the mood for something lighter this week, especially if I read a heavy book, and I can just easily find one on my list. So last week I finished The Stranger by Camus. So once I finished the book I'm currently reading, which is Eleni by Nicolas Cage, who is very different from Nicolas Cage. So once I finish this book, I think next I'm going to read either The Trial by Kafka or No Exit by Sartre. Both would be really interesting pieces, I think, to put in conversation with The Stranger. But I think the biggest surprise was just having everything so easily visible has really made me more excited for what I'm going to read next. And that excitement has been personally a huge motivating boost for me to pick up another book as soon as I finish one. Instead of when you get kind of into that reading dead zone where you close your book and you're like, I'll pick something else, and then 4 months go by. If you're finding this helpful and haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. I make videos about my journey trying to use more analog systems and just generally trying to be more present in our just very tech-driven, distracted time. And I keep seeing people, especially on like YouTube, referencing the idea of like, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, the second best time is right now. And while that's very overused and corny, I hate to admit the concept is solid. The earlier you start building habits that give your brain a break from screens and technology, the better. Do I wish that I had been focusing on cutting back on technology and being more intentional with things many, many years ago? Of course. But I'll just focus on the things I can actually change, which is doing it now. And look, these are the 4 habits that work for me now in this moment. By the time I get to my 40s, who knows what I'll be doing. With that, what works for you could also be something completely different. But at the end of the day, the principle is the same. Analog habits are just a good way to be more focused and intentional with your time. And it's really just so much harder to get lost doom scrolling when you're using something that does not connect to the internet. If you have any analog habits that have made a difference for you, I'm genuinely interested to hear them, so drop them in the comments. And if you have a bit more time to watch more, the YouTube algorithm will recommend a video for you right here. Oh, you're a good boy. Yeah.